I've always dreamed of bringing my favorite movie, The Final Countdown, to life, so I decided to build this, a massive 23-foot USS Nimitz. But the ship is just the beginning. To make this work, I have to scratch build an entire 1/48 scale air wing, complete with crew, working elevators, and a functional catapult. The ultimate goal? At least one flyable model that can actually launch from this deck and catch the wire for a landing. First things first, will it fit? I measured my car to make sure half the section would fit on the roof, then cleared out 23 feet of space in the garage. I modeled the basic lines in Blender and chose foam board to keep the project lightweight and budget-friendly. Just like my 18-foot Yamato and 17-foot Enterprise, I built this as a waterline model with a weighted keel. It's a design I've already proven. It keeps the ship light for transport, but gives it the stability it needs to handle the wind once it's out on the water. Detailing the hangar walls and painting the interior had to happen now, while I still had access. With the hull closed, it's time for a sea trial. I'm testing the buoyancy and seeing if my old Enterprise power pod is strong enough to drive and steer this new 23-foot hull.
How's it go?
It's a massive transport job though, 2 separate trips in the car just to get both sections to the water. Let's see if the plan works. You see the black tape? That's there because this ship tried to be an airplane. The wind got under the bow and it flew over 30 feet distance before crashing. Since it's all foam, it was just like a loose kite. It snapped the original mounts, so I had to improvise by screwing the bow straight into the keel and taping the seams. It's a bit of a rough fix, but it's the only reason the ship is still in one piece right now. Surprisingly, even with the wind at our back, the power pod is still steering this 23-foot monster perfectly. This build was made possible by my sponsors, JLCCNC and JLC3DP. They provided the 3D printed Tomcats and, most importantly, the stainless steel CNC shuttle for the Catapult system. To get your own custom parts, just head to the link in my description. Ordering is incredibly easy. Just upload your CNC or 3D files to their page, choose your material, and finish, and you'll get an instant quote right there. Once you're happy, just hit submit. It's a seamless process that really helps high-end projects like this come together. Huge thanks to JLCCNC for their support. To save on 3D filament, I opted for laser-cut plywood wings and stabilizers on the static air wing. It's a huge time saver when you're building 32 planes at once. Once they're painted, they blend in perfectly with the 3D printed fuselages. The deck elevator was easily the most frustrating part of the build. I spent over a week just trying to get it to move. I started with a screw rod system, then switched to a winch and pulleys, but it kept getting stuck on the rails. No matter how many times I 3D printed new designs, it would always jam on one side. Finally, I ditched the DIY rails for industrial linear bearings and a rack and gear system. That was the breakthrough. Now, it moves up and down perfectly at the exact scale speed I wanted. Here's how I'm mass producing the air wing. On this A-7, the main flight surfaces like the wings and stabs are actually plywood. But the real secret is the canopy. I 3D printed a custom mold and used a heat shrink technique to form the clear plastic over it. It gives the static models a much more realistic look than just painting the windows on. Here's the shuttle head that provided by JLCCNC. It's from stainless steel, so it's very durable and quite heavy, suited for my Catapult. How to order is very easy. Just visit the link I provided on the description and upload your file. Choose the material and finishing, and the price will come up at the bottom. Click Submit Order to continue. The Catapult design is actually pretty simple. I 3D printed the rails and used a CNC part for the shuttle head. That head is connected to a strand of rubber bands by a nylon thread, with a micro servo acting as the release. The real challenge was the Goldilocks problem, finding the exact number of rubber bands and the right thread length. If it was too strong, the servo would jam and fail to release, too weak, and the plane would just roll off the deck. It took a lot of experimenting to find that perfect launch power. For the finer details on the island, I actually used cardboard. It's easy to shape and surprisingly durable. but since this model is so massive, I couldn't ignore the flight deck. To make it look real, it needed those tie-down patch eyes everywhere. I painstakingly painted them one by one using a cardboard stencil. It took forever, but the realism is worth it.
Cool. Done.
Fun fact, I originally built this RCB-25 for a Doolittle raid project on my old Enterprise, but a broken prop ended that mission. Today, it's finally getting its moment as the official Catapult test subject for the Nimitz.
Ini menu. Nah ini kamerin Bang.
To really capture that movie magic, I had to build an air wing that matched the screen. I did my research and got to work on the Tomcats, Corsairs, Intruders, and Vikings, along with the Sea King, Crusader, Hawkeye, and Greyhound. But looking back, I realize I completely missed the Prowler. I also got some great feedback on Facebook from former Nimitz crew members who pointed out that my aircraft placement on the deck was all wrong. It's a learning process, and I love getting that real-world insight from the veterans who actually lived on this ship. One thing I realized during the build is that a carrier like the Nimitz never stays the same. It's constantly evolving. The ship looked one way in the 80s, changed in the 90s, and looked completely different by the 2000s, with new radar arrays, extra antennas, and a redesigned island tower. I actually started using a 2000s reference, only to realize the 1980s version I needed for the movie look was totally different. I've made some adjustments to get closer to the 80s era, but some parts are still a bit of a mix of different years. Think of it as a tribute to the entire history of the ship. For the radars, I'm using 360-degree continuous rotation servos, paired with a servo tester module so I can dial in the rotation speed. But even with all that tech, I still made a mistake. After posting a clip online, former Nimitz crew members pointed out on Facebook that the radar is actually spinning the wrong way. As for the rest of the smaller details, I did quite a bit of improvising. My theory is that, at this massive scale, the more detail you add, the more people just appreciate the overall look, without realizing those tiny parts are custom-made improvisation. To make the flight deck look alive, I needed more than just planes. I built a fleet of ground support vehicles, including the crane, tug tractors, and forklifts. For the flying models, I'm using two affordable 2-channel RC planes, one for the Tomcat and one for the Hawkeye. I scratch-built the F-14 using 3mm Depron foam, which actually ended up being lighter than the original kit. You can see the difference here between the static model and the flying version. Now that both are finished, it's finally time to see if they can handle the catapult. final touch for the deck was the crew. I used a resin 3D printer to get high detail figures and painted their vests in the correct designation colors with acrylics. I also wanted to make the deck look active, so I planned a winch system to pull the tractors across the deck using a hidden thread. I had actually run out of 360-degree servos, so I improvised and used an old RC car as a winch. I eventually replaced it with a proper motor and gearbox later on. With the rain starting up again, I'm heading inside to finish the last of the hangar details. Everything is finally done. She's ready for her maiden voyage. We are finally at the finish line, but before the maiden voyage, I need to perform a final systems check. I've assembled every single component on the ground to make sure nothing is missing. Seeing the 23-foot hull, the 32 aircraft, the support vehicles, and the internal electronics all laid out together really puts the scale of this project into perspective. Everything looks green. It's time to load up and head to the water. Months of building, fixing, and experimenting, and it all comes down to this: a 7-meter Nimitz model, fully decked out with 32 aircraft and functional systems. It's been a huge journey, and now you can finally see what all that effort was for. This maiden voyage is the payoff, but the project isn't finished yet. In part 2, we're going to push this model to the limit to recreate the movie scenes we all love. Thank you so much for following the build. Now, let's see her in action.